My wife said, Peter, don't you think you should experience it before you write about it? And I thought, good point. So I delayed my book for 2 or 3 years, and I decided maybe I should change my narrative, which had always been a gypsy, an outsider, and said, well, maybe this place. And so I did. I was on the neighborhood council, and I loved being on the neighborhood council. We didn't do anything that mattered, but I got the backstory of everything that went on, and I'd never known that. And I still, after 6 years, I was term to limit out. And now I'm still engaged, but don't have to go to a meeting once a month. But that was a huge, powerful thing for me to say I'm no longer an outsider.
Indeed.
I'm still an asshole, but I'm an insider asshole. And then when you get involved in your community, there's people that don't like you. And then when you're in the grocery store and they're in the produce department and I want to buy some lettuce, what do? Well, I walk in the produce department, I say, hi, Rama, and I buy lettuce. And so you have to live with your mistakes. And as a consultant, I never had to live with my mistakes. The worst that could happen is they never call me back. And so I like that.
I guess, I mean, we've sort of already been starting, but I guess I'll sort of officially kick this off and then turn it back over to Peter and Robert. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and supporting the restart of LIOS and donating to come to this event. I'm Chris Crosby. I'm the president of LIOS. As you know, we're sort of rebooting after LIOS died in 2018, and just honored to have Peter and Robert here with me tonight. By the way, we're doing these types of fireside chats once a month, and for instance, next month Ed Schein and Peter Schein will be with us. The month after that, Peter Singay will be with us. The month after that, Carolyn Lukensmeyer will be with us. And if you don't know her, look up what she's done. It's pretty incredible. Let's talk about building community, Peter. And then Fred Miller will be with us, and John Scher, and so we have a lot going on. And what else do I want to say? I want to recognize some people here. Mike Mahalan is my business partner, and no Mike, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He's just been amazing, help putting together all the applications for LIOS and starting things. And then there's a whole bunch of other volunteers. Paul you're not quite officially a volunteer, but I know you've been volunteering and others have been spreading the word. And Chris is on the call too. She's helping me with volunteer stuff. My brother Gil, he's here. He's been doing a lot of fundraising, and he will help teach at LIOS. So there's a lot of people to thank, and so everybody know, we're recording the session to use a later date if we see fit. And what else do I want to say? I'm not sure that I really need to go over your guys' bios, but Peter, Flawless Consulting and all the work you're doing in community, and obviously you've touched a ton of people here. And Robert, you started LIOS and are my father and have been my mentor for, I don't know, now 30 years. And so appreciate you both. And thank you so much for being here. And go ahead and take it away, however you want to do it.
Well, let me just say this, that, I'm honored to be doing this with you and with Peter, certainly, and Chris, my son. As I read Peter, your book, Peter, I was saying this to you earlier, your book on community, it's my first read of it, and I'm I've just been enchanted reading it and recognizing several things in it that I want to discuss with you, because they seem like there's some differences between us, but there are many things that seem so familiar, so like we're in the same lane about community. And I've done a lot of work, of course, in community development as well as within organizations, building them to be a community. But as I read it, you talked about how you began conversations, and I became enchanted with that. And so in a preparation conversation, folks, that we had before this, I asked Peter if he would take the lead with the small groups. Chris, are they broken into trios now?
They will be when you tell me to hit send, and I think we're doing 8 minutes. Is that correct? Good enough, Peter?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a lifetime.
So Peter's, I'm handing
You want
it to
me, you want me
Peter,
to say something?
I want you to set that up, because I read about it and I said, I want to hear how Peter does it. And I want all you to see how he does it, not just read about it. Go, Peter.
So thank you. So I'm here because years ago I was with Bob or Robert. I still can't figure out what to call him.
Roberto is fine.
And I knew that LIOS represented something that was important. And it represented something that was an alternative to the dominant narrative. So if you ask me, how does change occur? It comes to creating an alternative narrative. The dominant narrative is very simple: control, consistency, predictability, the business perspective. That's how our society is now oriented, the free market consumer culture. And so what draws us in is to create an alternative, because all that dehumanizes us. And so the work is to take every moment and say, how do we reclaim, rediscover, re-experience our humanity in the face of a commodifying universe, a colonial universe? And whatever you care about, whether it's whatever words you put in front of justice, social, racial, economic, it's really to try to rehumanize and create locally what globalization. So that's the larger context. And then you say, how do I give form to it in this moment? And Bob and I began with tea groups. And it was a great early career because I didn't have to know anything. All I had to do was sit there at the age of 27 and say, hi, glad you're here. I worked for Exxon, so we had Exxon people there. And I say, for the next 5 days, we're going to learn from what happens in this group. And my job is to help you learn what's happening. And up to now, from now on, it's up to you. So I learned that as an entry-level employee. And then the world was created because they got angry. They wanted to select a leader. So in the moment where you are, you always have the opportunity to reconstruct an alternative narrative. And when most people come to a session, they are asked, what's your expectations, blah, blah, blah. And so what you're trying to do is confront people with their freedom and confront them with their agency, that they have the capacity to create the future they want to inhabit. So that's been my struggle all these years, is to create structures and specifics to help people realize that the future they want to inhabit, they're going to have to create themselves. And you can't do it by telling them that. You do it by designing experiences. So I was saying earlier, I was failing miserably at Ford Motor Company. Running Wednesday, I was Mr. Empowerment. I wrote a book on empowerment. And PepsiCo called me one Friday afternoon when I was sitting in my shorts drinking beer. Hi, is this Peter Block? Yeah. Well, you're Mr. Empowerment. Would you help us implement empowerment? And I said, oh my God, who have I become? But on this Ford experience, and I couldn't find the room where it was held. So I went to the front desk and I asked him, where is the Ford meeting? And they said, well, you go to the Ranger and turn left. And I said, what is the Ranger wearing? So Ford Ranger is a car. Okay. So that's how. And so one morning I was fed up and I said, let me ask you some questions, which I'm asking you. So there's 4 questions that renegotiate the social contract between people who are leading and convening and those who are in the room. And the questions are, number 1, how valuable do you plan? So we have an hour and 45 minutes. How valuable do you plan for this 45 minutes to be? Which implies that you are the creator of your own experience. And so it takes you from consumer to citizen. And to be a citizen is to put under your own control your own well-being, that you can't purchase it. We'll talk later. Second question is, how participative do you plan to be? Third question is, how much risk do you plan to take in these 44 and a half minutes that are left? And the last question is, to what extent do you care about the experience of everybody else on this call? And you rate this from 1 to 5. If you're a Likert scale, you got to make it larger, but 1 to 5. And you tell people, we really don't care what 1 is low, 5 is high, and nobody in the world, your mother's not watching, cares what you say. And so in asking these questions, you construct a narrative and it doesn't matter how people answer. So to confront people with their freedom, whatever you came here for, it's an unfacilitated moment. So let's take 8 minutes. And the beauty of questions is they're ambiguous, they're personal, and anxiety provoking. Okay, any question where there's an answer is useless because we're trying to create an alternative to an answer-filled world. So let's do that. I suggest groups of 3. I think it's spiritual, it's magical. Groups of 2, you might get stuck someday with somebody who doesn't want to be there. That's awful, but groups of 3, you're twice as likely. So let's do this.
What we'll have is mostly groups of 3. There could be some groups of 2 in there.
Well,
Dad, Father,
make the 2s into 4s.
I'll do that after I get Robert.
Well, I just want to make sure once you get them into their trios or whatever, that these 4 questions are repeated so that everybody knows they are the ones responding to these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you forget one, so be it. And the other thing is, don't ever give advice. Just ask people, tell me more. So curiosity is the replacement for colonialism. Anybody that has something in mind for you is a colonial power. And I have no interest, and it's not useful for anybody to have something in mind for me. Now, none of this applies to the family situation. Okay, because in the middle of the night with my family, I conduct performance reviews they'll never hear. Okay, but you have to ask people, don't be helpful. Help is colonial. It means I know what's best for you and save me from that. And so you just say, wow, tell me more. So let's try this, 8 minutes.
Okay. And Peter and Robert, just don't go when you get called unless you really want to.
I want to be in a group.
Okay.
That's why I came.
There you go. Dad, are you going too? Yeah, I guess he's going. Okay, so then I'm going to assign the people that are unassigned. How many are unassigned? Sally, Chris,
That way I have to participate.
sorry for the page.
Oh, should I join breakout room? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Just have Chris's iPhone. And there is Chris's iPhone. There's Chris from Chris's iPhone. Let's see. I'm going to move you to room 10, Chris. Da, da, da. There you go. Phil go? Did Phil go? No, it looks like he went.
I abandoned my people. That was too fast.
Well, you know, it happens.
4 questions, we should have just given them 1.
Mhm.
New business manager.
Well, now we're back.
It's true.
are.
Ouch.
Right.
The downside of breakouts, you have to come back.
That's true.
Yeah.
Totally.
The other downside is there's a clock on it too. So, you know, it's you run out of the best efforts.
Life is like that.
Yeah.
All right. I just have to apologize to Corinna and Rania. I abandoned you by pressing the wrong button.
Wow.
No worries.
Yeah.
There. Okay. Okay. I want to ask something of you, Peter. At one point, I quoted him, Paul, or someone talked about that this can't be mandated. And in my work, I don't know the context of where you were building community and asking these questions. When I think of my work, almost exclusively, except for community projects, for HUD project, now those were not mandated. The people didn't have to come. But on the organizations, we moved from, we cascaded T groups from the top clear to the floor. And yes, everybody had to come. And people would walk in the door sometimes, see a circle there of chairs and say, what the, I won't use the word, is this? Stand there and say it real loud. I mean, because remember, there were middle managers, there were steel workers, and they all were in the same group with their boss. We did in-tech work groups and cascaded them across the organization. We also did the same with survey feedback, but people couldn't choose to come. And the results were, I think, profound in terms of the ability to deal as humans with each other, with the boss and the workers, to differ with each other, to et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little, I was a little confused about that statement about mandatory. So So I want you to respond to that, but I also want to know, well, let's say just to respond to that. Well, no, I also want to know the context in which you did a lot of your work. Mine was always hired by the county, the city, an organization, and with a clear goal, a measurable goal. Once we helped them get measurable goals, which wasn't easy, et cetera.
Well, normally after we broke into small groups, I would ask you as participants, what struck you about the conversation you just had? And I just want to mention that because I'm waiting to be hit by lightning.
Well,
So
thank
if
you,
you,
Peter. Yeah, let's go that way. Yeah.
let's just take 3 minutes. If 3 of you would say what struck you about the conversation you just had, all of us would like to know.
I can go. What struck me was that one of the participants in my group was extremely opposite of me. So everything that I think or feel, you know, he was feeling exactly the opposite, and just in a very different space than I was. And it was good to hear that context and look at alternate perspectives other than my own.
Right. I know you were surprised.
I was.
I would say I was struck by the fact that the three people, myself and the 2 others in my group, all seem to be searching for ways to make themselves useful and valuable in the community.
You know, that's a deep longing, isn't it? Thank you, David.
It is for me, yes.
A third one.
I'm struck by how the paradox of admitting something less than 5 is, especially like, for example, how much risk do you plan to take, is actually the most risky thing to say. And for me to say, and by the very act of doing that, it's high risk.
It is. Thank you.
Indeed.
So when 3 people speak, they've spoken for us all. And we don't have to get, you know, if you got, what have we got? 32 people. So I always, when people come back, you don't ask them to report because it's always fiction. Okay, my story about what happened to me, I love the quote that in Russia, even the past is unpredictable. And so if you're in a narrative work, which we are, so thank you for saying something. And optimism is overrated. Okay. And hope is overrated. Pessimism is, these are choices. We want to predict the future. And that's what's stolen away by the T group, by LIOS, is that your wish to control the future means you're participating in an illusion. And you want to accept the way things are, and then you want to produce the future, not predict it. So let me come back to Bob. You know, most of my work in my careers has been with large corporations, large governments like you. And I know if we mandate, they'll have a good experience. It's just that in the process of cascading, we're supporting the world I want to create an alternative to. And so I remember being in India once and everybody's in the room, big corporation. And I said, how many of you were sent here? Everybody raises their hand. They're all excited. How many of you chose to be here? Nobody moved. And so my notion has always been to confront people with the choice, which is what the T group does. I said, okay, we're going to break in 10 minutes. If you come back, you chose to be here. Because the truth is they all chose to come, because anybody who doesn't want to come. And so I just feel that if our process is not aligned with our intention, I'd rather have less impact. And every group I've ever been with has said, well, the right people aren't in the room. But I think I love the notion that both things are true. Mandated changed people's lives. Choice changed people's lives, and some people were left out. And I love the idea that if you're going to argue with me, I'm warning you now, I'm taking your side. Because everything that matters is nothing to argue about. An argument has no power other than the wish to be right. And the opposite of love is certainty, not hate. The opposite of truth is certainty. And I'm terrified of a world that's organized around I know and you don't certainty. So to me, the T group, people came expecting to go to a training program. And when I told them what we do in this group is up to you and you're learning about yourself, they were furious with me. And when they said, you don't know what you're doing, I thought, good point. And after a while, I learned that they were projecting on me their own doubts about their own agency. And the T group was such a naked design that confronts people. You're correct, confronting your life. Anyway, so thank you, Bob. It's nice. But, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Okay, we're interviewing each other. So you don't get away with all the questions, okay? Why did T groups, because in your memoirs, they're an important piece. Why did they matter to you as a way of entering into your ministry?
Into my ministry?
Your life.
Is that what you said?
Yeah, your life.
Yeah, yeah. But did you say the word ministry?
I did.
Uh-huh. Well, that has a double meaning for me. You know, I am an ordained clergyman.
I know.
Oh, okay, you knew that.
I'm using that against you.
Yeah, well, it became very clear to me. I'm going to jump ahead a little. Once I had my first T group and 2 T group experiences at Boston University in 1953, it became very clear to me that the notion of the beloved community, which I know you mentioned at one point in your book, the notion of the beloved community in the New Testament was not being manifest in churches, but I saw it being manifest in the T group. Because we would be there dealing with all the issues we dealt with, authority issues, big authority issues, as you sort of stated, how they would project on you as the T group leader. You know, I had a Navajo member of a T group of mine in the 70s who entered the group just hating me and attacking me. And I finally said to him, tell me about your dad. Now, that's a therapeutic question, and I don't usually ask, but I did ask him. And he said, my dad, I don't talk to. Oh, okay. That's a clue. I said, would you be willing during this Christmas holiday when you go back to, he was a Navajo, to wherever the tribe was, to look him up and talk to him? Well, he finally said yes. He went back, he talked to his dad. To make a long story short, his dad, who he said never would say anything to him, always kept secrets. His dad had been a code maker. You know, the Navajo code makers in World War II?
Yeah.
And they were pledged to secrecy. That wasn't released until the Reagan presidency, that they were allowed to talk about those experiences. So he learned that his dad was, secret. And in that, but the dad, it spread across his whole life. And that young man then, as his action project, which we have in our program, and Chris will have in the LIOS program, that young man battled right back to Washington, D.C., and got benefits for the first time for the Navajo Code Talkers. They had not received any benefits, but it all happened just out of a little encounter where I recognized I'm getting a lot of projection here. There's something behind this bigger than me. He doesn't even know me. But yeah, the T group became, for me and for many people in the church, you know, it became big in the church. In the Episcopal Church, Life magazine had a whole, when it was really famous, big magazine, had a whole, had a major story on the Episcopal trainings. It's just tons of work happened in the church because church people looked at that T group and said, oh, this is the ministry we started out to have, but we don't seem to know how to have it in the normal manifestation of church life.
Thank you. You know, I think it was a means of restoring our humanity. What you did, you trusted this Navajo man enough to lean into him. And when you leaned into him, he trusted you. And it didn't happen in the first 5 minutes. It happened after he had realized that maybe it's possible for us to trust a stranger. And
Nice.
you know, exactly. And whatever form all of you are taking, what LIOS represents is a way to integrate the notion of our humanity and still live within structured environments. You know, I just don't believe that if you argue against something, every time I argue against something, I make it stronger. And what LIOS will offer is an alternative to what exists, not an argument against it at its best. Now, none of us can resist whining. There's nothing better than good wine.
I want to just say something real quick before you go, Papa.
Okay.
There is some talk about a few folks that haven't ever experienced a T group or don't know what it is, and there's no way that we can explain it, at least fully for me in this period of time. But if anybody here wants to learn about what our version of a T group is, I'd be happy to talk to them. And of course, experiencing it is the really only fully way to learn what a T group is. But go ahead, Papa.
But let me just say to that, it has all of modern versions.
Yeah.
We don't, you know, you guys are great because you remember that. And I began with that. And one of the joys I saw with Bob was one of his teachers was Goodwin Watson. So we went to these T groups. And Goodwin looked at me one day and he said, Peter, you run the gamut of emotions from A to B. Obviously, it had an impact because that was 65 years ago. You know, but so there's modern versions. Anytime you're in a circle and people come to learn, you have the capacity to create a modern, more structured version of what the T group represented. So it's not like we're selling T groups. We're just selling situations where people experience and way of being together is the subject of attention.
Now, the dilemma is that the T group itself has many, it depends on the leader. You know, if you have a lot of untrained leaders tried to sell T groups because you can make money. And I've written about, and I could tell you about a lot of very sad experiences in the name of the T group. So, and what we believe we do, and I know I have a chapter in my memoirs book, chapter 10, which is totally about our method. I think that we are conserving what I learned from Goodwin Watson, Ron Lippett, and those people in the T group. And so just calling it T group doesn't mean, you know, that it's going to be the same thing as somebody else may talk about. I want to say one other thing from an earlier comment. You talked about arguing against. You mentioned that twice. In Fusina, Italy, where I had the privilege of working for 2 years with my wife, Patricia, and in an Alcoa purchase plant, aluminum plant. And instantly we had to live in Venice during those 2 years. Very tough, very tough. Anyway, I at one of the first sessions that I was there were the plant manager had he was doing an orientation for 80 people, and he wanted some union people there. Now, the history of the union and the management in the Italian company that had sold it was horrid. It was just horrid. And not only that, the three unions didn't like each other, but they, the union agreed that I think it was 8 or 9, it should have been 9, any people, union people could come. So here we are in a room with 80 people, and over here are these union people. And they had a spokesperson. His name was Pieroni, which actually means little Peter. But anyway, he was their powerful spokesperson. And he raised his hand frantically. The plant manager began, and then he turned it to me to do some guidance for the groups. And but he raised his hand frantically, and he's saying, "How can you expect us to trust management after what they've done for us all these years?" And I said, "Oh," and I had learned his name, Pierino. That's marvelous. Thank you so much. I'm sure that's on the minds of maybe everybody here. How can we have trust after all the mistrust? So thanks for bringing that up. Well, then 3 or 4 more times he would raise his hand furiously, and whatever he said, I'd look for the kernel of truth in it, and again would say thank you, thanks for surfacing that, because those kind of things need to be surfaced if we're going to really do what is dreamed of here. And Pierino became a very at noon that day. I'll just say a couple more things. They sat at the same table. Well, they started to sing. They loved to sing. Well, I love to sing. And they were singing an Italian song. And they didn't know all the words. I happen to know the words. To Va Pinchera, some of you know it. It's a...
You want to sing it for us now?
Well, I got a frog in my throat, but it goes like this. Va Pinchera, solidariete. Anyway,
not so bad.
Well, thank you. Not for me, it was bad. Anyway, but anyway, they started to sing it. Now that song is from Nabucco. Some of you may know the opera Nabucco, where Nebuchadnezzar has taken the Hebrews to Babylon, and they're standing there singing this about their freedom. They want their freedom. Well, that song, if the North had been able to get freed from the South in Italy, and these guys were, staunch Northerners, that would have been the national anthem. So it was a heavy emotional song for them. So I joined them. And then I joined them again. I kept joining them in all the singing they would do. They wanted to sing at every break. So there was that kind of connecting that was important in it. And we developed quite a friendship. And in fact, when I went back, we went back many times to Venice, and we would always go out and have wine with Pierino and other steel workers. And by that time, they were letting managers come to their wine tastings. So not, if I had argued with him, the problem I would have had, I would have lost connection.
Yes.
I just want to let people know that a little while ago, Gil put something about T groups in the chat, and I also put memoirs. Peter's talking about Dad's memoirs book. I put the whole book there in the chat for anybody if you want it. Keep going.
So That's a great, what you said. I like your singing. Because the singing means that the arts are part of what brings us together. And I like the idea that questions bring us together and answers keep us apart. And I agree that there has to be a place for dissent where it's acknowledged. It doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. And when I learned from T groups, when people get so mad at me, I can remember standing up against the wall. And they said, what kind of crap, blah, 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 blah. And I learned about projection. I realized it wasn't about me. And that was so useful to me. And so when people give you a hard time, you take their side. Thank you. Thank you, Purina. And so otherwise you feed their anger. And that's why when you arrange the room, you never have microphones around for people to stand up. Most public meetings have nothing to do with hearing.
Mhm.
That the leaders are on a platform and everybody's given 2 minutes to yell out their complaints like a wounded goat. And so what LIOS represents is a reconstruction of how we gather. And we gather in circles. Because the circle and the leader's job is to convene, is to host, not to be a hero. I don't want leaders to be a role model. And so that's, I think, what LIOS, what attracted me 20 years ago, or whenever it was when I joined Bob, is this concept or belief system or narrative basis that people in a circle asking each other questions, showing curiosity instead of answers or advice, is the democratization of our experience. And it's different than, it's just, every time I do that, and I've done it with, as you have, with groups of 15 or 31 or 4,000, you know, you get invited to be a keynote speaker. Wow. And I would say, thank you. What I'd like to do is break you into small groups. And they say, that's not what we came for, especially middle-aged white men. This is a middle-aged white man learning position, okay? I say, I know it's not what you came for. Now break into small groups. And if you want to sit in a small group, if you want to stay where you are, God bless you. If you want to sit in a small group and say, no, this is not what I came for, say that. And there's something political about that. There's something spiritual about that, that the church is struggling to remember what the Old and New Testament were about. And what you represent with LIOS is a methodology to remind us, to experience it, instead of preaching about it. And the faith community is huge because you have the language, you just don't have the design. I go to a church, they welcome me at the door. Thank you for coming. I'm a Jew. I go to a Christian church. Thank you for coming. And then I sit in a pew, bolted to the floor, waiting for a professional to interpret God for me. And so what LIOS represents is an alternative way of producing a future you have in mind, but to do it by confronting people with their freedom, with their choices, even though the world doesn't come for that. The world comes for safety. And what Bob did for Purino is he made the room safe for this angry man. And when he said, thank you, we needed your voice here, and created safety for this angry man, he created safety for everybody in the room. Because they all have their versions of cynicism and doubt. And anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Anybody like to say something? Reflect, make a statement. Please do not ask a question. Questions and answers, Q&A sessions are the
patterns and flaws and.
Go ahead, 425-771-0118. Give us your name. You disappear.
Meanwhile, I like how you keep tying things back to democracy, which was at the root of OD, Peter. So your first question, and now I'll get out of the way of 425-771.
He'll come back.
Too many numbers for me.
Say it again, Gilmore.
Equality and
yeah, equity.
That's it. It's all from the beginning of this profession to the present. It's a root value of mine, at least.
Well, it is equality, and then you can take that where you want. But it's the fact that we're, I don't know, equality and humanity are the same word to me. Mm-hmm. Not that we're the same, but I remember running a T group once, and I asked people at the end, why did this work for you? And all they talked about was each other. Nobody mentioned my leadership. And I left there and walked out into a courtyard, and I had tears in my eyes. And I thought, oh my God, what a relief. Nobody noticed me. And I always thought till then, somebody's watching, because I was the good son, Peter the Rock. I never had a chance. And it was such a relief that they realized that what they came for and what their life was touched by was their relationship with each other.
Right.
And that's the intention of everything you do, whatever you call it. And anyway, somebody else say something. Make a statement. Just don't ask a question.
Hi, this is Bill. I'm going to turn my video on too. I was just struck listening to you, Peter, over the last few minutes, because I do a lot of my work in the corporate world and a lot of it with Microsoft. And the way T groups exist, the environment in which the T group exists, seems to me to run contrary to every instinct that white male professional and the posture you talked about earlier. It seems to run contrary to every instinct they have, because leadership is about control and power over. It's about structure, pyramids, climbing. And I'm just struck, and this is not a new realization for me, but it's profoundly deeper for me listening to you right now, how contrary that is to the fundamental assumption that is present in our corporations today.
So I have a question for you, Bill. First, an expression of gratitude. Thank you. Why would they hire you?
They are seeking. They are seeking.
Yeah.
And they are seeking, though, in a set of assumptions in which they are stuck.
Yes.
Right. And so the conversations I have had at times when I've had the opportunity to even have the conversation, it's like speaking another language. They only think of power and structure, and that leadership is the person at the top.
I know, but they hired you, didn't they?
Yeah. They are seeking.
So there is, in the midst of that narrative, a longing. And what they're doing isn't working. And it's not what Microsoft offers to the world. Where do you want to go today?
Right.
And the fact they hire you, they invited you, they might even pay you, that you can speak into and not argue with the predictability, but just say, well, what is it? What's the option or alternative future that might be of interest to you? Because I'm here, you know, and you're right. That's why we feel so lonely. What LIOS does is help us not learn so much, but overcome our isolation. And you and I, most of the time, feel like we're crazy, Bill. What the fuck are we doing here? Really? You know, and who are these fools that hire me? And I remember we once did a research with our clients. Why did you hire us? You know, because we were always felt we were lousy marketers. And they said, because I never got the feeling you wanted the job.
Mhm.
And if they're hiring you, Bill, you're showing up in a way that says, well, maybe you represent an option to the narrative they rationalize. And what you do, and I don't know what you do, but I bet in some ways when you work with them, you confront them with the fact that they have more choice than they ever imagined. And the controlling, heroic leader isn't who they choose to be. They just talk like you do. Hey, it's so powerful, blah, blah, blah. And you offer an alternative. That's what you're creating. And so your marketing is looking for people looking for you. And there's somebody in Microsoft, for some reason, fools that they are, said, Bill, would you work with us? And you said yes. And you're looking in Microsoft for people that are open to you. And the ones that aren't, you say, thank you. You know, happy birthday.
Yeah, it seems like so much of the work that they tend to want to do is on the individual. They're very open to doing individual work.
That's a great point. That's profound. Yeah. They're not interested in a collective shift.
Mhm.
Right.
And what
Right.
we've done with the circle and Bob
Right.
and Chris and Gilmore is to say the invitation came for individual healing, but we respond by saying the individual can't heal in the absence of a collective. So can we get 6 people? Can Bob get the union in the room? But that's profound. And individual healing doesn't make a difference.
You know, I want to
Okay,
move this in a different direction.
I thought so because you had your finger up pointing.
That's right. That's right. And the I want to. The T group is obviously my life's been built around it, thanks to Kurt Lewin. My the career has been built around it. However, some of the most significant work I've ever done, there was no T group involved at all. And, you know, I think of a project or a community development. In community development, we didn't have T groups. Certainly in some of the ones that I can't go into now for time, where we help people get high productivity, we didn't have T groups. So I don't want to confuse OD with T groups. I mean, they're powerful in my life. What else can I say? But some of the most profound interventions were without T groups. There was one community development activity, and it's in my memoirs. And incidentally, the memoirs is free. You get it. You know, I'm not selling it. We send electronic copy. But in the memoirs, I talk about, I have a couple pages that shows a chart a thing we handed out to every group. Imagine 150 people in the room, and imagine groups of about 5 or 6. And imagine that each one had a chart that said, do this, don't do this, then do this, don't do this, then do this, don't do this. And we weren't guiding it at all. Now I'd go around and see if they were stuck in any way, but otherwise the whole thing was in their hands, but with guidance. And at the end, like in the university project, student project that I mentioned, the people in the room were ready to give reports of what they had come up with. And then the other thing that I build into all of that is what I call micro macro. I make sure before I do any community project that whoever's going to receive this, let's say it's the city council. The city council has agreed that after they receive the reports from the communities for hundreds of thousands of dollars of community development in sewage and other things, but where the citizens determined what they want to recommend. After the city council receives this, then a month afterwards, we're pulling together all of the people of the community to have a meeting to celebrate the decisions. Now, do you get it? If the decisions didn't follow what they recommended, I even said to people, it'll be an organizing meeting. We'll organize again, because they didn't apparently pay any attention. Well, I can tell you that really close to 80 to 90% of all recommendations of the citizens in the city, all over the city, in all areas of the city, were accepted. And they were accepted because they were good recommendations, but they were also accepted, I think, because the city council was held accountable, knew they would be held accountable. And that was an important issue for me.
But see, you're still working with groups. What Bill was
Yes.
saying, working on
Absolutely.
individual transformation doesn't take us anywhere. It's groups. Now, everybody in this conversation has their own version of groups, but it's the collective, it's the group. We did T group training for years, and individuals' lives were changed. And we asked them, has the culture changed? No. And that's when we kind of started T group team building on the East Coast, because individual development. And so we said, let's get teams in the room. But I don't think the methodology is decisive. Whatever you're doing, if you're showing up to get people to deal with each other, I don't care whether it's a garden club or a nature center or an organization, that when people learn to trust each other, and there's something called social capital, which means we learn to trust each other. And what I'm sure what LIOS represents is how to build trust in an accelerated way.
But also the other thing that LIOS represents is when there's clear authority that's going to make the decision, how do you make sure before you take that contract that that authority is going to be held accountable if they ignore the recommendations of the citizens? See, that's a primary issue for me. And
I forgive you for that.
Okay, well, I frankly,
they're both true. It's all true.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
now we're looking at the clock. We were going to break into another group, Chris, right?
Well, we probably, we have
8 minutes is plenty. It's a
we have about
lifetime.
18 minutes. So, we could break into another group.
I think we should.
Okay.
And the question we had for you was, how was this landing on you? And where are you in terms of, because we want to create, support LIOS as a embodiment of all the ambiguity and complexity that we're talking about. So I would say, let's go back to groups of three and talk with each other about how is this landing on you? Because what we want is to understand whether this is something you can support. And if you can't, we still love you, okay? You can't organize the world without like-mindedness is the enemy of democracy. So let's break into small groups and they'll talk about what they want. You got 8 minutes, which means you got to talk fast.
Okay. And I'm just using basically the same groups.
Yeah,
And
same groups.
here we go.
Thank you. Sorry to be so controlling.
But I'd say something, but you know. Assigned. Okay.
Hey, Chris, I wasn't in a group previously because I
No
joined late.
worries.
So what was the lead up context so I can actually add something?
I mean, I think you're just talking about, you know, how is LIOS useful or what are you getting out of this? I think, and but your people will help with the lead in too.
Okay.
I was thinking about breaking into groups when Peter was saying what he was saying, but I'm just going to put you in a group.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here. And Chris,
I don't, yes, thank you.
do you remember what group you went into? I put you in another group last time.
I was with Gilmore last time. I believe it's group 10.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm going to put you in a different group because his group sort of became a 2 group. So now I'm going to put you in a
Oh,
group.
okay,
I'm going to put you in
that
room
works.
2. Oof.
Sure.
Sorry, Sally.
I want to go back to my breakout room.
I want my mommy.
I want that too.
Oh,
So I'm with you, whoever said that.
I think that was a guy named Peter,
Yeah, nice.
I guess. Peter the Rock.
Yeah. Where is he? There he is. Move squares.
Well, what are you hoping for now, Mr. Crosby or Mr. Rock?
well, what do we have, 12 minutes?
A little less because I need to say a few words about LIOS.
Okay, so let me come back to the structure. Okay, these are little structures, social architecture. So what struck you about that conversation? What touched you about that conversation?
Well, the thing that most profound learning for me after many years of doing this was that the comment that you made, Peter, about being excited and not having to take any credit for things just happened because you were there, and it suddenly became their win. I think of all the times I've tried real hard when in fact, I don't have to try that hard at all. I just have to be there and set the space, and a lot will happen without me, without my having to work too hard to make it happen.
That's great, David. Thank you.
Idea. That's happened to me several times. I've had the experience of, wow, this really worked. I don't know what I did, but it really worked. I miss having those experiences.
Yeah. You made a difference, but it wasn't what you said. It's about who you are. And you'll never know who you are. I can't figure that out.
There you are up there.
Hi, Pat.
Thank you. Other people, what struck you about the conversation or the
You're
session?
on the picture, you know.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Chris,
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm new to this to OD as kind of a like the practice of OD, formal practice of OD, and all of the foundational components. So what struck me about this was, first of all, I'm giddy because as I had mentioned to a couple of people, we just read Flawless Consulting in our last quarter at the Pepperdine MSOD program in preparation for one of our consulting engagements, along with Edgar Schein's, some of his books. And what struck me about what I'm hearing here and also the last conversation is exactly to say a yes and on what Dave Porter just said, but also kind of reinforcing that seeing people that have been working in this profession for so long and the success is possible through that presence, and presence alone can be an intervention, is very powerful to me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Chris.
you're welcome. I like what you said a lot, Chris. For me, that's, I think, one of our differentiators is just helping people build a presence and stop trying so hard.
Which is one of the hardest things, right? I mean, that's
It's a nightmare.
yeah, that's what I'm learning, and the process I'm going through is developing myself as a clean instrument is well, excuse the expression, it's a shit show, but honestly, at the same time, I'm learning so much. It's amazing.
It is. And at the end of the day, what it requires is faith that you can be something that's undescribable and unknowable. And it's not about skills and tools, even though they may get you somewhere. And underneath that is the fear of being really powerful. I'd rather be a deficiency and explain myself away by what I'm not. And it's hard to say that maybe I did make a difference in this world, even when I was 30 and a half.
So Chris Crosby, you going to talk the last few minutes here?
Yeah, I have I have 2.5 minutes, so somebody else could say one last thing before I say a few things.
I think there's what's resonating for me is there are so many stories, especially out of my experience, the LIOS experience, and those that I've graduated with and been with over the years. And I think those stories need to have a voice. And it's not only successes, but it's also the learnings. And the self has the being able to use that in a group, in a team, in whatever form, but a community. And I think community has such a powerful thing. And somebody said to me once, he says, never, I think it was Bob, never underestimate the power of a group who wants to work together and work their own issues. And so that is so true.
I can't hear you. What? I can't hear it.
Oh.
You know,
Sorry, oh, don't go away. I mean, right on. Just
Paul, this is a problem with this. The family
Well, because-
dynamics always enters in.
yeah, family
Absolutely.
dynamics here.
But let
Yeah,
me
I don't
just
know
say,
what's
Paul,
happening. Well, I'll find out in
I
2
know
minutes here.
you will. For 7
Yeah.
minutes, you'll be on. But
What-
I think all transformation, the small group is the means of transformation. And that's what's hard to gather in a globalized world. And that's what you're saying, Paul.
Yeah.
That's why we need each other and we don't even know it. And it's
Yeah.
not about loneliness. It's about power.
Yeah.
That Chris will find herself because she'll surround herself with people that allow her to be as powerful as she could imagine. And that's what you've discovered in these years. And it doesn't matter what you call it.
Yep, it's the self and relationship.
Mm.
People have been talking about all the MSOD students, and I'm you know, this is really, this revival is almost a joint LIOS MSOD, because Michael and I have been working together, and so it's great to have everybody here. Just thank you so much for coming. And I wanted to give and thank you, Peter, for doing this, and Robert for doing this. Papa, thank you so much for being here and sharing your stories and bantering as you will. The first time that I think you've ever presented like this, so this is really amazing. Want to give a little recap on LIOS, where we're at. We have an approved certificate program, and so we're looking for students for October to start, and it's fairly aggressive. So we obviously could use word of mouth and help to gather those students. We have we're a pending 5013C, meaning we're tax deductible, and we will have whenever it clears. So I'm not sure it will clear for a couple more months. But according to everything I understand, once we're pending, according to the IRS, we are tax deductible. We have a master's degree pending as of last May. So that means in 12 to 18 months, we'll be able to start accepting applications for our master's degrees. And once we have a graduating class, then we will apply for accreditation. So approximately 6 months after our first graduating class, we will be an accredited master's degree. We are a standalone institution, meaning we're not affiliating anymore. And in the past, we've always affiliated with other universities, and every time you do, that university dictates. They're not curious, they don't ask, they tell you what you have to do. And so that's awesome, I think. And it also means that we have a lot of work to do to get ready for all the different things that we have to do as an institution, including registrar, including academic stuff. So we do have to report to the state, and we have to get all the standards straight with the state in order to maintain everything. And by the way, once accreditation happens, we will have federal funding for scholarships. So that means we're probably 3 or 4 years out before we get that federal funding. And this year, we're about 10% of the way to our fundraising goals. And all the money that we take in goes to student scholarships, goes to basic business functioning, including helping people, helping us market professionally, and every other thing that a school has to do. And there's a lot. So thank you for all for your donations for coming today. Really, really appreciate it. Here's a couple ways, that we'd love your continued support. Continue to donate, refer students to us. You can have people email me directly, and I think Michael, maybe you were going to put my email in the chat. But just so you know, if you send 3 or more students from the same organization, we'll give you a 10% scholarship for those students. We need help finding alumni also. When LIOS closed, we lost all data basically, and it was controlled by Bastyr and Saybrook. So they have alumni lists, but they won't give us the names necessarily. We have a lot of names. We have about 60% or so, maybe 60, 70, but we don't have all their emails. So any help would be great. Also, if you can afford it, please consider making a substantial donation. We're calling donations over 1K Guardian donations. We currently have 9. We're aiming for 50 by the end of the year. We're going to be creating a special page on our website, and we'll find various ways to honor those guardians, those people that have helped us. Spread the news. This is a small group. Thank you, Chris. Please contact me with the same email, and love to help you volunteer. We're small group learning. We're all about a lot of self-development and a lot of group process things. So you will get all sorts of different ways to help impact organizations. Even our certificate program, which is 6 week-long modules, you will get about 5 or 6 what I call interventions, but they're really based on how do we help a group come together and heal themselves. And that's the essence of LIOS. And then finally, visit our website, lios.org. Let's see, what does this say? Oh, in about a month, I'm going to be beginning to put in extra trainings. So we're about a month away from telling you other things we're doing. I told you about all the different fireside chats, but I also will teach the different process consulting things that we'll do. I have Patricia's here. I've been talking with Patricia Averett around doing Power Labs, or a version of Power Labs. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say Power Labs.
I'm here. Organization workshops.
Yes. These are all based on Barry Oshry's work. So how do how do those roles and organizations sort of play, and how do you learn from that, and how do you make sure that you can be conscious in them instead of not? Also, I'm talking with Ethan Schutz, and we will develop some sort of combination T group and counter group, a la Will Schutz, Ethan Schutz's son. So there's a bunch coming up, and just want to thank you so much. Remember, in August, Edgar and Peter Schein will be here, and there's so much more. So thank you for helping me, make this possible, and continue to help me.
All right. Well, thank you from this fellow in Canada saying that it's really nice to see you back, to see LIOS come back. It's important.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Au revoir, bonne chance.
Au revoir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.